Los Angeles, a city of dreams, where the nightlife pulses with excitement and endless possibilities. But beneath the glitz and glamour, danger lurks in the shadows. Two vibrant young women step into the neon glow of Hollywood's nightlife, expecting an evening of music, laughter, and unforgettable memories. Hours later, they are found, unconscious, abandoned at separate hospitals by unidentified men in masks. One of them, barely clinging to life, manages to whisper a chilling detail before slipping away forever. What happened in those missing hours? Who were the men who left them behind? And what deadly secret lurks beneath the city's glittering surface? Hilda Marcela Cabrales Arzola was a 26-year-old architect from Mexico, an ambitious and talented designer who had recently moved to Los Angeles to build a future filled with promise. Christy Giles, a 24-year-old model from Alabama, was equally driven, using her creativity and passion to carve out a career in the city's competitive fashion industry. Both young women were vibrant, full of life, and chasing their dreams in a city that thrives on ambition. But in November 2021, their promising futures were cut short in a way that sent shockwaves across the nation. Their deaths were not just tragic but deeply unsettling, marked by unanswered questions, masked figures, and a series of events that pointed to something far more sinister than a night gone wrong. The involvement of a Hollywood producer only deepened the mystery, drawing widespread attention and intensifying the demand for answers. Before we dive into this chilling case, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that needs to be told. Your support helps bring awareness to cases like this and ensures that the voices of victims are never forgotten. Now, let's get into the story. Hilda Marcela Cabrales Arzola was born and raised in Mexico, where she quickly developed a passion for architecture. From a young age, she showed an eye for design, sketching structures and dreaming of shaping skylines. Her dedication led her to study architecture at Universidad de Monterrey, where she excelled academically and built a reputation as a determined, creative mind. Hilda's ambition extended beyond borders, and when the opportunity arose to work in Los Angeles, she embraced it, a city known for its innovation, its beauty, and its dangers lurking just beneath the surface. Christy Giles had a different but equally driven path. Born and raised in Alabama, she grew up with Southern charm and a rebellious streak that set her apart. Drawn to the world of fashion, she pursued modeling, making a name for herself through bold, striking images that captured attention. Along the way, she met Jan Cilliers, a fellow creative, and the two married, a relationship filled with adventure, travel, and shared artistic vision. But Los Angeles was a city that never stood still, and Christy, independent and free-spirited, continued to navigate the fast-paced industry, always seeking new opportunities. Despite their different backgrounds, Hilda and Christy found common ground in Los Angeles, where their paths crossed through mutual friends. Their friendship blossomed quickly, bound by ambition, creativity, and a shared excitement for the city's endless possibilities. They explored the social scene together, exclusive parties, rooftop gatherings, and underground events that blurred the lines between glamour and risk. It was a Friday night in Los Angeles, November 12, 2021. The city pulsed with life, its streets lit by neon and headlights, its clubs and lounges filled with music, laughter, and whispered secrets. For Hilda Marcela Cabrales Arzola and Christy Giles, it was another night of adventure, another chance to experience the city's electric energy. Their evening began at the exclusive Soho House in West Hollywood. A members-only club, Soho House was a playground for Hollywood elites, influencers, and artists. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of expensive cocktails and designer perfume. Hilda and Christy blended effortlessly into the scene, their confidence and beauty making them instant magnets for conversation. They sipped drinks, danced, and exchanged smiles with familiar faces. As the night deepened, an invitation came, a warehouse party downtown. These underground events were unpredictable, a mix of high-energy excitement and unspoken danger. But for two young women used to navigating LA's social maze, it was just another stop on the night's journey. They accepted, slipping into the back seat of a rideshare, the city's skyline reflecting in the windows as they sped toward the unknown. Inside the warehouse, the atmosphere was chaotic yet exhilarating, pulsing bass, flashing lights, and a crowd that moved in waves of intoxication and thrill-seeking. It was here that they encountered David Pierce, a Hollywood producer with a reputation that whispered of excess and blurred lines. He wasn't alone, his associates, men whose names would later surface in police reports, hovered nearby, watching, waiting. Details from that point remain hazy, fragmented by witness accounts and security footage. What is known is that at some point in the early hours of November 13, Hilda and Christy left the party in the company of Pierce and his group. Whether they agreed to go or were coerced remains a chilling question. They arrived at Pierce's residence, an apartment in Beverly Hills that would soon become a crime scene. Then, silence. For nearly 12 hours, there was no sign of the women, no messages sent to friends, and no social media updates. The city moved on, unaware of what was unfolding behind closed doors. What happened inside that apartment? Were they drugged immediately? Did they realize too late that they were in danger? The first horrifying sign of the night's grim conclusion came just before 5 p.m. on November 13. A black Toyota Prius with no license plates pulled up outside the Southern California Medical Center in Culver City. Two men in masks emerged, carrying a motionless body, Christy Giles. They left her on the sidewalk, still dressed from the night before, and drove away without a word. By the time hospital staff reached her, she was already gone. Less than 2 hours later, a second drop-off. This time, the same Prius arrived at Kaiser Permanente West Los Angeles Hospital. Again, two masked men stepped out. Again, they left a young woman behind. Hilda Cabrales Arzola was still breathing, but barely. She had no identification, no phone, and no way to explain what had happened. Doctors rushed to stabilize her, but the damage was extensive. Toxicology reports later revealed a terrifying cocktail of drugs in both women's systems: cocaine, fentanyl, ketamine, and GHB. These weren't substances casually mixed at a party, they were the ingredients of something far more sinister. Hilda fought for her life for 2 weeks, her body resisting the overwhelming toxins. But on November 24, the fight ended. Her family made the heartbreaking decision to remove her from life support. Two women, full of life and ambition, gone within hours of each other. Two bodies were left at hospitals by men who didn't even stop to check if they were still alive. And one burning question remained: was this a tragic accident or cold-blooded murder? The moment Christy Giles' lifeless body was found outside the Southern California Medical Center, alarm bells rang. A young woman, dressed for a night out, abandoned by men in masks. This wasn't a typical overdose case. And when, less than 2 hours later, another woman, Hilda Marcela Cabrales Arzola, was discovered clinging to life outside a different hospital, law enforcement knew something was deeply wrong. Detectives from the Los Angeles Police Department's Homicide Bureau took immediate interest in the case. The precision of the drop-offs, the untraceable car, the masked men, the absence of personal belongings, suggested an effort to erase evidence. It wasn't just a matter of two women overdosing, it was a carefully orchestrated disposal. But who was responsible? And what exactly had happened in the missing hours between the warehouse party and the hospital doors? Investigators began retracing the women's final steps, starting with surveillance footage from both hospital locations. The same black Toyota Prius, the same hurried drop-offs. The men never entered the hospitals, never attempted to seek help. Instead, they abandoned the women and vanished into the city. The lack of license plates complicated identification, but digital forensics offered another avenue. Christy's last known location was the warehouse party, and Hilda's phone had last pinged in Beverly Hills. A search of their social media activity led detectives to one name that appeared repeatedly that night: David Pierce. Pierce wasn't just another partygoer, he was a self-proclaimed Hollywood producer, someone who thrived in LA's underground social circles. Further digging revealed a disturbing past, allegations of prior assault, whispers of drugging women at parties, and yet, no formal charges. But Pierce hadn't acted alone. Phone records placed another man at the scene, Brant Osborne, an aspiring actor and Pierce's roommate. Witness statements from the warehouse party mentioned Osborne hovering near Pierce that night, lingering in the background as introductions were made. And then, there was a third man, Michael Ansbach, a cameraman with a history of working Hollywood events. Piecing together the night's events was no easy task. The biggest challenge? Proving what had transpired behind the walls of Pierce's apartment. Autopsy reports confirmed both women had lethal levels of multiple drugs in their systems: cocaine, fentanyl, ketamine, and GHB. But were these drugs willingly taken, or were they administered without consent? The presence of fentanyl, a powerful synthetic opioid, raised suspicions. Neither woman was known to use it, yet it had been found in fatal quantities. Then, an unexpected breakthrough: a conversation overheard on a film set. While working on a production days after the deaths, Grant Osborne allegedly bragged to colleagues that he and Pierce had been with two women who overdosed and that they had cleaned up before dumping their bodies at the hospitals. The statement, reported to authorities, became a crucial piece of evidence. As detectives dug deeper, a horrifying pattern emerged. Pierce had a history of sexual assault allegations dating back years, many eerily similar to what had happened to Hilda and Christy. Women came forward, recounting nights that started with drinks and ended in blackouts, waking up disoriented in his apartment with no memory of how they got there. But despite multiple accusations, Pierce had never been convicted. Why? Many victims had been reluctant to press charges, fearing the backlash that often came with accusing men of power in Hollywood circles. Others had reported incidents, only for their cases to stall due to lack of physical evidence. It became clear that Hilda and Christy's deaths weren't isolated events, they were part of a larger pattern of predatory behavior that had gone unchecked for years. As investigators worked to gather enough evidence for arrests, another force was pushing forward, the families. Christy's husband, Jan Cilliers, became a vocal advocate, refusing to let his wife's death be brushed aside as an accidental overdose. He used social media and news interviews to demand accountability, urging authorities to treat the case as a homicide, not just another drug-related tragedy. Meanwhile, Hilda's family traveled from Mexico, devastated but determined. They knew their daughter, an ambitious, responsible woman who would never willingly take fentanyl. They pushed for answers, for justice, and for the truth about what had happened in the final hours of her life. With mounting pressure from both the public and law enforcement, investigators finally had enough to move forward. The evidence, surveillance footage, toxicology reports, Osborne's damning statement, and years of allegations, painted a picture that could no longer be ignored. On December 15, 2021, police moved in. David Pierce, Grant Osborne, and Michael Ansbach were taken into custody. But would the charges stick? And more importantly, would they reveal what really happened in those final, harrowing hours? The arrest of David Pierce on December 15, 2021, marked the beginning of one of Los Angeles's most closely watched criminal cases. But even as he sat in a jail cell, the true scope of his crimes was still unraveling. Prosecutors wasted no time digging into his past. What they found was a disturbing history spanning over a decade. Women from different corners of Los Angeles came forward with eerily similar stories, nights that started with charm and drinks, followed by blackouts, confusion, and waking up in Pierce's apartment with no memory of what had happened. For years, these accusations had been dismissed, ignored, or lost in the system. But now, with the deaths of Christy Giles and Hilda Cabrales Arzola, prosecutors were determined to hold Pierce accountable, not just for them, but for every woman he had ever victimized. On July 5, 2022, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office formally charged David Pierce with first-degree murder in the deaths of Christy Giles and Hilda Cabrales Arzola, 4 counts of prior assault with survivors spanning from 2007 to 2020, and additional charges of administering drugs with intent to commit a felony. His roommates, Grant Osborne and Michael Ansbach, were charged as accessories, accused of helping cover up the crimes. As Pierce sat stone-faced in court, prosecutors painted a chilling picture. He had done this before, many times, but Hilda and Christy's deaths finally exposed him. On September 10, 2024, the trial of David Pierce commenced at the Los Angeles Superior Court. The prosecution built their case meticulously, using surveillance footage of the masked men dumping Christy and Hilda at separate hospitals, toxicology reports proving the presence of multiple drugs, including fentanyl and GHB, forensic evidence from Pierce's apartment revealing traces of the same drugs and chilling clues that suggested prior assaults, and testimonies from past survivors, some of whom had remained silent for years out of fear. One woman recounted a terrifyingly similar experience from 2010. "I woke up in his apartment. My body felt heavy, numb. I couldn't remember anything. I told myself maybe I had too much to drink, but deep down, I knew it was something else." Another survivor from 2017 broke down in tears, recalling how Pierce had lured her with promises of industry connections, only for her night to end in darkness. But the most damning evidence came from Osborne's own words. Prosecutors played a recording from a witness who had overheard Osborne boasting on a film set, "We had to clean up, get rid of them before anyone found out. It was an accident, but we weren't about to go down for it." Osborne's casual admission sent a wave of shock through the courtroom. Pierce's attorneys attempted to argue that the women had taken the drugs voluntarily, a desperate move that backfired. The prosecution countered with an expert toxicologist who shut down the defense's claim. These were not recreational doses. The levels of fentanyl found in their system suggest an intent to incapacitate, not to party. The defense also tried to discredit the survivors, but with multiple women telling the same harrowing story, the jury wasn't buying it. After 4 months of testimony, closing arguments were made in January 2025. The jury deliberated for 6 days. Then, on February 4, 2025, the verdict was read. Guilty of first-degree murder in the deaths of Christy Giles and Hilda Cabrales. Guilty on 4 counts of prior assault. Guilty of administering drugs with intent to commit a felony. Pierce remained expressionless as the courtroom erupted in emotion. Christy's husband, Giles, held back tears. Hilda's father clutched a locket containing her photo, whispering a silent prayer. Outside the courthouse, the public reaction was swift. Survivors of prior assault, many of whom had been following the trial closely, celebrated the long-overdue justice. Protesters held signs reading, "Believe Women," and "Justice for Christy and Hilda." On March 10, 2025, David Pierce was sentenced to 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 30 years for the prior assault charges. The judge, in his final statement, delivered a chilling rebuke. For nearly 2 decades, you hunted, drugged, and harmed women under the cover of darkness. Today, that darkness ends. Osborne and Ansbach, who had taken plea deals in exchange for testifying against Pierce, were sentenced to 7 and 5 years, respectively, for their roles in covering up the crime. For Christy and Hilda's families, justice had been served, but the loss remained unbearable. In their honor, Giles launched the Christy and Hilda Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping victims of drug-facilitated prior assault. Meanwhile, the case sparked national conversations about the dangers lurking in nightlife culture. Calls for stricter regulations on fentanyl, GHB, and predatory behavior in Hollywood's elite circles gained traction. David Pierce once walked free for years, leaving a trail of victims in his wake. But in the end, justice caught up with him. The case of Christy Giles and Hilda Marcela Cabrales was more than just a criminal trial. It became a grim reflection of the dangers lurking beneath the surface of Los Angeles's nightlife, the vulnerabilities of young individuals in the entertainment industry, and the systemic failures that allowed predators like David Pierce to operate for years. The story of these 2 women resonated far beyond their own tragic fates, forcing a reckoning within Hollywood's social scene, the justice system, and a culture that often glamorizes excess while ignoring its deadly consequences. For years, drug-facilitated assaults have been whispered about but rarely confronted in the city's elite circles. The use of substances like GHB, ketamine, and fentanyl as tools of control and coercion was not new, yet victims often found themselves met with doubt rather than support. Many survivors of these crimes wake up in unfamiliar places, confused, ashamed, and gaslit into believing they had simply partied too hard. The Giles and Cabrales case shattered that illusion, exposing just how easily predators manipulate these circumstances, and how devastating the consequences can be. But this case also raised an uncomfortable question: why did it take the deaths of 2 women to bring Pierce to justice when so many others had come forward before? Court records, investigative reports, and survivor testimonies painted a picture of a man who had spent more than a decade preying on women, confident that his victims' voices would never outweigh his own influence. Some women had filed reports, others had confided in friends, but the pattern remained. Pierce continued to operate in plain sight, moving freely through LA's exclusive clubs, luxury parties, and underground scenes. The trial was not just about convicting Pierce, it became a moment of reckoning for survivors who had been silenced for years. Women who had once felt isolated in their experiences now stood together in court, their voices finally being heard. Their courage did not just convict a single predator, it set a precedent, reminding the world that speaking out can lead to justice, no matter how much time has passed. As the verdict was read and Pierce was led away in handcuffs, the weight of his crimes finally came crashing down. But outside the courtroom, the fight was far from over. The families of Christy and Hilda, along with advocacy groups, continued their push for legal reforms, calling for harsher penalties for drug-facilitated prior assaults and stronger protections for victims. The case ignited conversations about consent, accountability, and the dark side of LA's party culture, ensuring that the legacy of these 2 women would not be defined by their deaths, but by the change they inspired. In the end, David Pierce believed he could act without consequence, that the silence of his victims would protect him forever. But silence does not last forever. And when the truth finally came to light, it was louder than he ever could have imagined. Christy Giles and Hilda Marcela Cabrales Arzola's story is a tragic reminder of the dangers that can lurk behind charm and status. Their voices were silenced, but their case sparked a movement, one that demands accountability, awareness, and change. David Pierce is now behind bars, but justice doesn't end with one conviction. It's up to all of us to stay vigilant, protect one another, and speak out against those who prey on the vulnerable. If this case moved you, don't let the conversation stop here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Together, we can keep these conversations going and shine a light on the truth.